Welcome to Cancer Talks, a podcast sharing stories of personal transformation and collective healing from people who have been touched by cancer. My name is Claire DeLaslo, and I'll be guiding today's conversation. Nandi Szabo is an expressive art therapist, college professor, end-of-life doula, death midwife, wellness practitioner, artist, dancer, and a woman who practices the creative art of living. Nandi provides individuals and groups an energetic and integrated healing practice, incorporating visual art, movement, music, writing, and drama. She cultivates safe environments where people with cancer come together and discover what is seeking expression during times of change and transition and at the end of life. Hi Nandi, welcome to Cancer Talks.
Claire, thank you for having me.
So I wanted to begin with sort of a broad question that will hopefully also situate listeners a little bit with the work that you do. And that would be to open with how you would describe the relationship between creativity and healing.
Okay, the relationship between creativity and healing. You know, healing is a mystery. We really don't know how we heal. And in a sense, creativity is a mystery as well. And what I like to say is that creativity is what is seeking expression. And we're looking for that through various art modalities, whether it's art, movement, music, poetry, writing. And so I think the relationship with creativity and healing is that we're looking that in the healing process, we're looking for what is our truth? What is our truth? I think that there's a direct relationship between that expression and what we're seeking to expression in our art or in our creativity. So I have this sense that that creativity is expansive, and healing, there's a sense where we have to open our minds and open our heart to what that means for us personally. And that's really very important. And it's very difficult, actually, when you have like the sort of the medical model and family and society and fears, everything that's kind of way on top of us when there's a cancer diagnosis. So finding out what our personal truth is and our personal way, I think, is really important. And in a sense, this is what creative expression is. And creativity, sort of the backbone of creativity involves, adaptability and freedom and kind of a detached devotion in that sense. And so we can see the parallels with that in the healing process, how we have to open our hearts to what, and in a sense, surrender to the healing process. And we can get into more what that means, because that's kind of can be a charged word. But surrender and expression and choice, and actually creating safety as well. Because, and again, in the groups that I do, I say the most important thing for expression is creating a safe container. And in the cancer journey, there's just a lot of fear and a lot of just a lot going on. And so how do we feel safe in our choices?
Yeah. And I would ask you, as far as you can remember today, what your earliest memory of cancer is. And then we can think about how your work with creativity weaves into cancer.
Yeah. I thought about it. And my grandmother, who was a Hungarian that didn't speak any English, lived with us growing up, and she got a skin cancer, and as kind of a 7 and an 8-year-old, you don't really know what it is. You just don't get it. And even the word cancer, what starts to happen is that the word cancer just has such juju around it. I mean, it's so big. I mean, and so I knew, because everybody was tense. and everybody was, and when I say everybody, family members, particularly my mom. So that was kind of the earliest that cancer's big, cancer's dangerous, cancer, and that cancer would kill you, because we're talking 50 years ago now, 50 years or more ago. And I think there's that idea that there's perceptions have changed a bit with the onset of new treatments. But back in the day, it was pretty much a death sentence, and that was very scary for a child. But she got it was a skin cancer, and it wasn't one of the more serious melanomas, so she got it removed. And so that was my first time, about 8 years old. And then there was really no cancer actually in my scanner, except sort of the global. There was nobody in my family that had cancer, up until my mom died, and that's when I really saw it. Although I'd started working with people with cancer before that.
And so, what led you to work with people with cancer?
The universe, the guides and angels, the fate. I don't think I ever would have said I'm going to be working with people with cancer. And I was a budding creative art therapist, and I had been working with children, and actually the chronically mentally ill, using the expressive art therapies, and particularly dance movement therapy. And there was a grant that came out by the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. And I went into Sutter Hospital and found kind of what you might call a champion. And I told her what I did, and I asked if they would write the grant. And it's just kind of an interesting story they wrote the grant to the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. So the work was going to be just for people with breast cancer at the time. And at the same time, I was diagnosed with a lump in my breast, just almost simultaneously. And I went in for a lumpectomy, and they said, well, we'll get back to you, as soon as we can. Well, so I had a week of wondering whether my life was going to be changing on a dime and what this meant. And I think that was such an interesting thing to happen, because on Friday I came home and I had 2 messages on the answer machine. If you can remember, I'll remember what an answer machine is. And the first one was the result saying your lump was benign. And the second one was, we're glad to tell you that we've gotten the grant to work with, to do expressive art therapy. So, I see that was sort of an interesting thing happening for me to give me at least a fraction of an empathetic response to that a cancer diagnosis. And so with that said, we had the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer funded the program for breast cancer survivors for 4 years, and then the Sutter Foundation picked up the work, and we opened it up for people with all kinds of cancer. No differentiation. And so that's kind of how it evolved, and I've been doing it since 1997. So that's 24 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have definitely questions about how the work has changed over that time. But I wanted to just offer for listeners a little intro to what expressive arts therapy is, for those who might not know.
Okay. So I have what's called a master's in expressive art therapy. Interestingly enough, I was educated on the East Coast, and this work is also called creative art therapies. And so it's the two are interchangeable. And it was invented by a man named Sean McNiff, who created what was called an arts institute, where he wanted to create what he called the psychotherapeutic use of movement, or excuse me, not just movement, but of the arts. And where the arts, which would include dance movement therapy, art therapy, music, drama, and poetry or biblio, or some kind of writing therapy, where the arts became the forum for change and growth. And where that combine the clinical aspects and the theoretical foundations of psychology with the arts. So we call it the psychotherapeutic use of the arts. And what's important to note in this work, that like for art, it's not what the picture looks like, it's what the picture feels like. And to then to be able to express that, and like the same in movement, it's not whether you can dance or not. There's the idea that emotional repression is locked in muscular tension, and so when we move, we feel. So it's up to like then the dance therapist and the art therapist and music to create interventions that help further what is seeking expression. So particularly in the cancer journey, we're looking at a lot of things that are going on that the medical model or allopathic medicine particularly might not handle. I mean, you may be even told after all treatments that you're disease free. And one of my participants once said, my doctor, I went in and I got a free diagnosis, that I'm no evidence of disease. And he goes, "You're fine." And she said, "Well, why don't I feel fine?" And so I feel terrible. I feel afraid. My body image is shot. I've got loss after loss after loss. And so this is again where the creative art therapies or expressive art therapies move in and help find a little bit more what might be under the radar, and help the emotional, spiritual issues in a creative, I like to say, through a creative lens. That how can we look at this? How can we look at how we're healing and what the cancer means to me? And at the same time, addressing how important, how healing it is to express that which is being held, sort of tight in the body and tight in the heart and tight in the soul. It doesn't really take a rocket scientist to kind of see the surrender, and there's that word again, to a process, and the expression of it. The stoic suppression of feelings takes a tremendous amount of tremendous amount of energy, really. So whether we're writing or talking about our emotions really reduces that stress. And then, you'll hear like a picture's worth 1,000 words. I mean, there may be, and particularly with children, it was so great because often they're pre-verbal, as well. And so again, using a particular art modality, using, putting your paintbrush to a piece of paper like this rather than the real control that you might have with a pencil. I mean, each one of those is addressing a different thing that is seeking expression. So did that answer your question, Claire, enough? All
and
right.
for listeners, that when Nandi said like this, it was
yeah,
swinging back and forth of the paintbrush,
just like big, bold movements, or
letting it out. Painting through movement, kind of.
And so the beauty of the work is that you meet yourself where you are. And that's, again, the structure that a creative art therapist creates, is that whether, like in the dance movement therapy, you may be needing to be moving around the room in big, bold movements, where the other person may be huddled down, holding themselves in. But the structures are created in a way that, again, you meet yourself in your truth, or you try to. And that in itself is such a healing aspect of the journey.
I'm feeling really connected to this relationship between healing and creativity because I'm moving through week 6 of the Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which, as I was preparing for this conversation and looking more into the work you do, there's so much resonance. And I even stumbled upon a group that moves through you can join this group and do the Artist's Way, a group of cancer patients who are using the Artist's Way to move through cancer. And I'm sort of experiencing the inverse, where I went in with the goal of deepening my art practice, and then I'm finding all of these miraculous ways that engaging with art is healing me, even though it wasn't healing from an illness that I was initially seeking.
Well, and again, when we look at cancer is so indiscriminate, and the idea that the artist's way, so much of it is saying, dealing with like the critical voice, and that, like the blurts, she calls them. And, the idea to just learn to listen and to kind of let go. And again, that has a very healing vibe to it. So it's a great book. I used it. I taught a class when I was a professor at City College called The Psychology of Creativity, Intuition, and Problem Solving, and that was my text. And so we worked through it. So bravo.
Cool. Yeah, and just to offer a little context, the blurts are like those things that you're maybe like the devil on your shoulder, just the things that run through your mind that are internal judgments that probably never really get out there, but they're in the back of your head, maybe shutting down creative impulses you might have or desires you might have because they're too silly or boring or someone did them already.
But what's interesting to connect the dots is that by doing art, often your critical voice comes up a lot. I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't dance, I can't write. And by having a relationship with the critical voice when you're doing art is practice for what's going on and the demands you have out in the world. And so that's the beauty of the practice. And you can start to see so in a sense, you're learning to listen to your truth more. And I mean, think about that when you have treatment options. Are you gonna go all allopathic? Are you gonna go all some alternative? Are you gonna do a little bit of both? You have your friends telling you what to do, your family's telling you what to do. So interestingly enough, I think that's again another relationship between creativity and healing, because you're learning to listen to what you want to do.
Yeah, I've never made that direct connection, and it makes me think of the way that I think mainstream culture can kind of position, like especially like a woman's breast cancer journey as a performance, like a feat of endurance, where there's like a lot of glorification of survivors and what it looks like to heal, and I mean sometimes very empowering trends of people kind of sharing about their journey on social media, but that there is really a lot of social pressure about what decisions you make, and there's an audience. If if you let people in your life know what's going on, it's hard to quiet those voices of if I choose allopathic and then I don't really get better, think of like how disappointed my allopathic relatives are going to be.
Sure.
It's scary.
Yeah. Another way to look at it too, which I think is so important, is that the cancer journey is a heroic journey.
Yeah.
And it follows just the classic heroic journey, line of you are, you've got a calling, whether you like it or not. I mean, you're the journey and you got to go on it when you have the diagnosis, and you are going to be met with dragons that you have to slay. You're going to meet with people that will be your helpers. At some point, you may have, it's called the apotheosis, where you're going to see the bigger picture of the whole thing. And then there's often a reward in a strange and twisted way. And the people I work with often call it the twisted silver lining, where all of a sudden they may have better boundaries than they ever had before, or left a job that was hurting their soul, or so there's often that boon at the end. So really it's a heroic journey from the get-go.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear how your practice and how your work with people with cancer has changed over the decades.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because for just personally as a therapist, I mean, when you have oodles and oodles and oodles of experience, you start to see what works and what doesn't work. It's changed in the sense that I always looked at a symbol for my work is a bowl. All right, this beautiful light-filled bowl. So my relationship has changed in the sense that I had to create that bowl to hold all that's involved with the people I work with, rather than, sort of just taking it in, because people will say, isn't it hard working with people with cancer? And in the beginning, it was. There's less. I'm really just able to hold the really strong emotions, and particularly fear of death. In the beginning, death is not even talked about, but it's like the elephant in the room. And how to hold that, that's become a big thing for me as well, because people, it's not something to avoid, because we're in a death denial culture and nobody wants to die of cancer, but they do, and that affects people in the room and the family. And how do we honor that, and in a sense live our best life we can, even when we have cancer. So there's been different perspectives that have changed or altered, in the work that I do.
The bowl is so beautiful, and it's a answer to a question that I haven't asked yet, but I often ask anyone who doesn't have cancer themselves but works with those who do. One doctor has a hand washing ritual and a few other rituals. Another death doula has a relationship with the ocean, asking the ocean to hold the emotional weight with her. And there's actually a silver bowl in my life. It doesn't belong to me, but I hosted some bath healing days.
Yeah.
And we were using a silver bowl. But I'm remembering what a good container.
Yeah. And one of the words you said that is so important is ritual, is creating healing rituals. And this has been a beautiful evolution in the work, is that we've created something in our group called our medicine bag. And things that you don't just do in the group, but interventions for yourself that are pretty much healing rituals for yourself. And whether it's a movement, like we have something we call the he breath, which is when you're feeling like your head is like la 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 la, just about ready to explode, is that how do we ground and center? So rather than coming from a place of tension and anxiety and fear, that we ground down into the body, and how can the body support us in then moving forward into what we need to do. And that's a little ritual that we'll do even in our groups, just to start the group. We have rituals.
What does the he breath sound like?
Well, the he breath, it's I can't really just explain it, because it's really more of a movement, but it's where you take your breath is informing the movements, in which you take a deep inhale up, and then an exhale bending down. And so on that bending down, you're exhaling, but then on the inhale, you're scooping up like energy or light or love, and you're moving it through, you're energetically, and your intention, moving that inhale up through the body and connecting then with the sky. So you're this axis that we are. So you're creating this sort of straight energetic line from the earth to the sky. And then we press our hands down, and on the exhale, then we say, he's, we're pressing down. And again, this is the creativity. We have to be in service to the experiment, because people who sort of don't live in their body could see this, or hear the words, listen to the body. I mean, if you don't know how to listen to your body, that's like asking somebody to explain snow who's never seen it.
Yeah.
And so with the he breath, we're using our own intention and our own power, and in a sense saying, I can do an intervention. I can do a little ritual right now that will ground my energy, ground me, or bring me back into my center. So I am in a place to hear better, absorb better, take care of myself, set boundaries, when we're coming from a centered place rather than an anxious and all over the place. So I kind of got off topic there a little bit.
I think I put you off topic because I wanted to hear, about this ritual, which I think you described beautifully. I think we,
Yeah.
Did you want to mention another thing in the medicine bag? Is that where
Oh, sure, because the medicine bag, I mean, it's fabulous. Is that we work with visualization, and the bridge between how we're feeling in our heart, how we're thinking or visualizing in our head, and then how we're moving in our body. And we're bridging those. And in the creative art therapies, we may do a drawing after a visualization, and then we may move it out. And so like a typical intervention could be find a movement that just feels healing. Find a movement, and we'll sort of try on each other's movement. And there may be a movement when we try on, the person across the room or across the grid in this Zoom world. And then we may process that. Like, what does it feel good? Well, it makes me feel, when I do that movement, I feel alive. When I do that movement, I feel confident. When we're doing a punching move or a move where we're grabbing, all these then can be said. If it helps you in this moment, put it in your medicine bag. And when let's say when you need to feel like you've got to be assertive, what if you take that movement that you just said makes you feel powerful, that punch, 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 and know that that's as good as medicine, because you said that movement helps you feel strong. Last night in my group, we said, what can we do, these small gestures of kindness to ourselves? And again, a gesture of kindness, put it in your medicine bag and remember it. And one gesture was that to do something every day that makes your heart beat fast. And I mean, it could be a 30-second anything, but something, and then put your hand on your heart and feel the pumping, feel the life force pumping through you. And I mean, that was we processed that. We talked about that. Why that would be important, why that would be a reminder for us that I'm alive right now.
It reminds me of what yoga asana practice can do, where you move through sun salutations and then you lie down in shavasana, which feels similar to.
And you let it integrate.
You let it integrate, and you notice the blood flow and
Yep.
how the energy has changed.
Well, we talk, and there's an intention in yoga. Then an intention is to stay present and to breathe and to know your boundaries a lot. So what beautiful practices for the cancer journey.
I'm gonna hold on to this medicine bag, and I'm also I love it as a description of something that I notice myself building as I get older. It's one of my favorite parts about getting older, that I feel like at some point, noticed that I had a toolkit for getting through hard times or calming myself down or whatever. And then now noticing the toolkit just fill up and expand. And as a teenager, maybe I kept forgetting what tools I had. I would use them sometimes and then totally forget they existed, and then fall apart again. But I'm 26 and I'm starting to feel like I can keep better track of my medicine bag.
Good.
I know where it is.
Well, it's empowering to know that you have that. And I think that this is a really important piece in our cancer journey, that you feel empowered to help heal yourself, that you are the important piece. And when I do my intake interviews, I always ask, what's your relationship between your own ability to heal? And there's folks that will say, I put it in the hands of the doctor and I trust my doctors and I'm going to go that route. And others will say, well, absolutely, I'm working on my diet, I'm doing creative visualizations and affirmations, and I'm trying to do this, that, and the other. So I mean, there's no one isn't better than the other. But I have found in my work that having that medicine bag concept, you're not just doing something in a support group and then leaving. You're trying to cognitively store it so it's there for you when you need it.
That's so important. And, our work kind of centers around personal transformation and also collective healing. And yeah, transformation requires that repetition and being able to take something out of the context of a work, integrate the tools and the things that you learn in community. And I just really appreciate that giving voice to, it's not really about what treatment choices you've made, but that anybody on any medical path with cancer can use these tools for the spiritual healing and the emotional work.
Sometimes I just take all the explanation up and just say, just what feels good, just what feels good right now, and because doing what feels good in your journey can be your, self-care, and self-care is a very important theme that weaves through the group. So these medicine bag tools are for self-care, and it helps us practice it, because, like, again, there's so many demands of life, whether you're working or through the journey or have family or to take care of, or you're single, and there's just, how do we take care of ourselves and keep looking in that medicine bag?
Well, my favorite part about recording these podcasts is the stories that unfold, and the role of storytelling in anyone's cancer journey, or just the story of cancer that we're telling together. So I'm wondering, in the spirit of story, if you remember when any of your tools, the medicine bag or anything else you use in workshops, do you remember any stories of like when that came to you or when that came into your practice?
Well, that particular, the bowl, is that before I, and it's not so much now because I've been in the work so long, but still, it still happens that any intervention, anything that I'm going to offer, whether it's an art or movement or drama or movement, I have to do myself before I'm going to ask anybody else to do it. And so it was really in one of the groups that I was participating in a drawing. I don't really like to call them exercises, just, exploration, where we were asked, where I asked them, and we'd done some movement, we'd done some listening, some inner listening and movement, and we came out of the movement and we'd said, well, what is the symbol? What is the symbol for me today? What symbolizes my healing journey, or either myself or myself in the healing journey? And so that's when the first bowl came up. And it just felt so right. Just, this, all right, I'm holding all these brave, incredible people in this bowl, and that was filled with light, because light is an important piece. So that was one of the first places I got the bowl. Yeah.
That's a great story.
You want any more examples?
Well, I want to know what you mean by light is an important piece.
Well, we spent a whole 12-week session once. Sometimes I'll pick a word, and the word will kind of come to me at the beginning of the session after I've done all my intake interviews, that might be thematic. And so what I might do, even with that question, is that we'd semantically, as a group, figure out what light means. We'd brainstorm it, because everybody's really got a different sense, but there's this idea of the healing light or brightness. And, would we go through the brainstorm of what defining light? Words come up like warmth, safety, angels, sun, and, shadow, because you can't have light without a shadow. And so we would just say, well, so why is that important on the healing journey? And even the idea of using that, because all those things, most of the things about light, people could plug into their own personal symbol, their own personal medicine, so to speak, that's in the idea of light. And the idea then of moving light through the body, I mean, there's lots of difference. I mean, we'll touch upon a lot of alternative and what one we would even call woo-woo, new age aspects, but we're always trying to find what one's own personal relationship is to it. So with the idea of, even the idea of doing like moving light through the body, again, this gives a sense of control. This idea that where can we send your light, your healing light that you're envisioning to your breast, and then create an affirmation that says, the healing light of love and grace is, healing my breast to be cancer free. And then what if we do a movement with that, or posture, or just posture, or even a gesture that we're embodying? It's like sort of embodied consciousness. And I like to say we're covering bases here. How we're thinking, how we're feeling, and how we're moving. And going back to, so what is the light? Is that we would, like I said, we spent 12 weeks on it, where it was not only about the visual light, it was about the energetic light. It was lightening up, like how angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. And how important, and like, or what, I won't say how important, but even just addressing what is the medicine in your healing journey of lightening up, of finding that, because you've got some heavy decisions in front of you, or you're sick, or you're facing death. Why is the concept of light and lightening up important to you, and how will that serve you in your journey right now? So that's going down a lot of pathways of light.
It's so exciting. I love that angels can fly because they don't take themselves too seriously. Anything that made you laugh recently? Lightened you up?
That lightened me up. Well, yeah. Interestingly enough, I just a couple of days ago got home from Oaxaca, Mexico, with Dia de Muertos, and here is a celebration of death and our ancestors and life. And I just laughed all the time there, not necessarily in the something. I'm trying to think if there was something that happened. Oh, there's something that happened in my group. Is that, and this, again, lightening up, is that we are, often will say, what is a healing image that comes into you, and during a particular one. And one of the women said, and this just made everybody laugh, her healing image that she got was one of those blow up things that are on the side of the road that are advertising things. They're like okay, you can't see me, everybody, but the auto, the wiggly blow up, whose arms are flailing, and she goes, I just got to loosen up, I just got to relax, and everybody laughed at that. So that's an idea of how laughter came into our group, and then we all tried it on. And that really made everybody laugh, because awesome. It was like, okay, there's a visual there and how healing. And so we put that in, you put that image in the medicine bag.
Yeah. Well, I have to share that our audio engineer cannot stand to look at those things because she just cracks up.
Yeah.
She thinks they're so funny.
Yeah. Really.
I've seen somebody really lighten up in the face of a wiggly blow up auto advertisement. I want to circle back to, I love the way that you said in this trifecta, what are we thinking, how are we feeling, and how are we moving? Because it reminded me of the way people rattle off, like the physical, the emotional, the mental, whatever. Right? Like, that's the whole body. But it sounds so different when you say throwing movement in there. Like, I've never heard, it's like, okay, we thought about it. Let's feel about it. Let's move about it. Often when I hear that trio, the physical part sounds so fixed,
Yeah.
And so I love, rather than like, how's my emotional body, how's my physical body, how's my mind, putting it more into motion.
Well, in dance therapy, and out of the umbrella of the creative art therapies, my great love is movement and dance. And this idea that when we move, we feel. I mean, it just sort of just makes so much sense that I'll ask the question, how does my body support me or impede me? And when we're tense and tight and holding and keeping, and shallow breathing, how does that serve us? Sometimes it serves us in a sense of, protection. And so I'm not saying that it's all bad. And yet, what happens when we're living our life that way? So the idea of being, stress management is not just in the brain. Stress management is moving into the body and finding the relaxation response. Again, with the mystery of healing, how important is that? And it's the idea of, I love going back to this idea of embodied consciousness, is that when we are knowing how to listen to our body, which comes first, the chicken or the egg kind of idea, that when we relax, we feel better, or we feel better because we relax. I mean, try both of them on. And the idea, what if I just start breathing here? Or I realize, I'll say it probably 30 times in any session. Are you breathing? And breathing keeps it moving. Did you know that the root word of emotion is movere, the Latin word, which means to move?
Yeah.
And so the idea that the arts, whether it's actual physical movement and dance, or drawing, or writing it out, or acting it out, is movement.
We haven't talked explicitly about intuition so much, but it's here. And
very much.
We did a workshop that I co-facilitated over the summer about it was called Strengthening Your Intuition. And so we were asking this question of each other, really, how do we strengthen our intuition, and sharing tools and trying them on. And what I walked away with, because I certainly didn't have answers going into the facilitation, my best guess was we strengthen our intuition through the body, which I feel like you've said in different words already.
Yeah, because again, the body is the beautiful storage unit of it, and our body doesn't lie. Whether it's our heart beating, whether it's tensing up, and the trick is, well, I won't call it a trick. The practice is learning to listen, is to taking that, to be still enough to hear your intuition. There's the expression, in your heart you know the way, and that's just another way of saying I'm listening to with my heart. I'm listening. My intuition tells me what is right for me. We don't have a lot of support for it in our culture.
That's true. Yeah, it's treated as an enigma, and also as a gift that certain people have and other people don't.
Right.
Rather than something you can build a relationship with. Do you think there's something cancer wants to teach us?
To teach us, when you say us as a society or as a culture?
Sure. But you could also answer it as you, whichever.
What does cancer have to teach us? I can't tell you how many people have said in sort of different ways that they felt that cancer entered them, or they got cancer when they, quote unquote, weren't looking. And that's sort of an interesting perspective. It's really amazing, even the experiences I've had with people who go into remission, where doctors are like, whoa, how did that, what did you do? What did you do? And many of, just, again, this sort of phenomenological kind of observation, I would see that many of these people where they've gone into remission have all of a sudden started focusing on their body, on their health, on their exercise, on their stress level, on their family dynamics, of what's serving them, what's not, what job they've hated forever. So back to your question, what is it teaching us is how do we stay present, of staying present with loving kindness to our body and listening and taking the pathway to learn to listen to the body.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a review in your podcast app. Cancer Talks is a platform for anyone who has been touched by cancer. Write to us at info@cancertalks.com if you have a story to share. If you're moved to donate, please visit cancertalks.com/donate.